While Zambia is now considered by the World Bank to be a low-middle-income country, the vast majority of the rural population has been left out of Zambia's recent economic growth. In Zambia, there are 1.6 million smallholder farm households. These are households that cultivate less than 20 hectares of land. 75% cultivate only 2 hectares of land or less. These households tend to be extremely poor and rarely produce surpluses of crops or livestock to sell, and are therefore unable to benefit from government spending on agriculture through programs such as the Food Reserve Agency. Some of the major challenges in addressing the entrenched poverty and food security among this Zambian population are the emerging land constraints. Let us meet Fides Banda. Fides is a small-scale farmer producing over 30 tons of maize on her customary piece of land. Fides has the capacity to grow and would like to grow her production. Unfortunately, the unavailability of land poses as a challenge to her.
Our tradition here, this is in Senga land, is that when you are living at a village or when you go to look for a place in a village, before the headman can give you where to build a house, he will allocate you land where you do your farming, because you can't have a house without a field. So my parents have been living here, so they were given a field. So when I also completed school, I went to the headman, asked for the field to say, now I'm grown, I want to have my field. That's how I was allocated the field I'm doing my farming in.
The Indaba Agricultural Policy Research Institute, IAPRI, whose primary objective is to analyze policy with the goal of reducing poverty and increase income of rural population in Zambia, conducted a study to assess smallholder commercialization in the midst of landholding constraints.
The majority of the smallholder farmers who reside in rural Zambia are not participating in that agricultural growth. Only about a quarter of the smallholder farmers are participating in that agricultural growth. The majority who are not participating in this growth are faced with one unappreciated constraint: access to land.
Although Fides has been very productive on her 6-hectare plot, the unavailability of land has limited her growth and her contribution to the growth of the agriculture sector in the country.
So when you look at the land that I have, it is not enough. I still need the land.
It is heard that 94% of Zambia's land is under customary rule and by implication available to smallholder farmers. This number was a guess 40 years ago, and given important changes in recent decades, needs to be updated. Yet, in spite of Zambia's apparent land abundance, smallholder access to land is far more constrained than many people are aware. Nearly half of smallholder farmers indicate that there is no unallocated arable land for allocation in their communities. But why?
There is a thought that 94% of the total farmland in Zambia is under customary land. This is the land that is held in trust by the traditional leaders for the smallholder farmers. And this is the land that is available for the smallholder farmers to use for farming. But 95% sounds too high. Why? Because if we take Zambia as a whole, you put in roads, you put in rail, you put in mountains, you put in the parks, the national parks, and also you subtract the land that is titled, you'll find that what is left is very little for the smallholder farmers to use. And when I say little, this is land where there is infrastructure, for public infrastructure, schools, roads, and hospitals. So this is why it's a reality that smallholder farmers indeed are land constrained. So with this situation, there is need for creative investments to open up new areas to solve the problem.
In addition to that, some of the land, the so-called abundantly available land, is not available for farming settlements. It is taken up by water bodies such as lakes, rivers, swamps, floodplains. Some of it is taken up by mountains, escarpments. Some of it is taken by game parks, game management areas, and even game forest reserves, unless they are degazetted. So when you consider all these factors, it makes practical sense that in essence, smallholder farmers may be facing land constraints.
The unavailability of land continues to pose as a major setback for several small-scale farmers. Fides has been forced to build a chicken run in the middle of her village despite knowing the consequences. Whenever Fides decided and tried to build a chicken run at a spot around the village, some members of the village would claim that the land was theirs.
I ventured into livestock production in terms of birds, that is poultry. So as you can see, I started in the house. So I see there is something, after 6 weeks I'm able to sell, after 6 weeks I'm able to sell. So I said, let me have a bigger poultry where I can produce maybe close to 1,000 birds. So according to the portion that we are given, that is the demarcation you are seeing there. So behind there is some land which I thought is idle because the people are not there and the like. But when I approached the people in charge, say this is what I want to do, the grants came and said, we want to settle there. Because of that, that's how I forced myself now to go back to the limited land that I have. I go back there, come up with a poultry house, which is contrary to my plan, because the poultry house which will be constructed here, according to measurements guided by livestock services, I can only keep up to 500 birds, meaning that the land shortage is there and there is more, because on my plan, farming is a business. I'm also supposed to do the piggery. Now, when you look at this yard, surely it's difficult.
Zambia Land Alliance is a network of NGOs which was established in 1997 to promote equitable access and secured ownership and control of land among vulnerable groups such as women and children. It stands as a voice of the voiceless in promoting just and fair land policies through lobbying, advocacy, and sharing of information with the public. Currently, it is working in liaison with traditional leaders in resolving land disputes by securing and guaranteeing the rights of customary landowners through the issuance of customary land certificates. Let us find out from Fides what her opinion is on the introduction of land ownership certificates.
It came very clear to say if someone has been farming on the piece of land for 3 years, no one has got the right to go and grab that land from that person.
So with these certificates now, things have become much easier. No one can come up and just say what they want or make a statement and say this is what it should be. We want this proof. So it helps us to administer issues of land ownership very well. It's a very effective system, and I wished this system could be adopted elsewhere.
Access to titling of smallholder farmland is skewed towards speculative investors rather than productive smallholder farmers. Smallholder farmers that acquire title to farmland tend to be wealthier and non-local. Furthermore, there is not a strong relationship between titling and productive investments.
Well, the current system of titled land allocation is very bureaucratic and it costs money. And this kind of bars the smallholder farmers from accessing titled land, especially those that are low income, those that are less educated. They don't just find ways of maneuvering through the system. And besides, it's very Lusaka based, such that the people from outlying areas can find it very difficult to travel all the way and start the long process of acquiring title deeds.
Emergent farmers who hold between 20 to 50 hectares now control more land than smallholders in Zambia. These farmers are mostly not smallholder farmers who have managed to consolidate land and grow, but rather are individuals who come from outside the sector, that is, from non-agriculture jobs in urban areas. There is great potential for small-scale farmers to increase their income and move out of poverty if their access to land is increased.
Our analysis has shown that increasing land access, keeping all other factors constant, for smallholders with less than 2 hectares of land by 1 hectare is significantly associated with increase in agricultural sales or agricultural income, and as well as a decrease in rural poverty rates from about 80% to under 50%. Then one would say, how can this happen? You know, we have heard that the majority of the smallholder farmers in Zambia own less than 2 hectares, and those are the majority. When you are able to bring up the majority to participate in the markets, their income is increased, so much so that within the rural income, the demand for non-farm goods increases. And as people are able to produce their own food, use the extra to buy non-farm goods, the rural economy tends to transform. And as a result, the poverty rates also reduce. So what does that mean? This actually means that increasing smallholder access to land needs to be considered as a serious policy option, which is well budgeted for through the national agricultural budgeting system, so that they can develop or open up more suitable land for increased agricultural commercialization. This can be done through investment in roads, markets, clinic, health centers, and the electricity, among others. The current concept of opening farm blocks in each of the 10 provinces of Zambia is not a viable option in this regard for the smallholder farmers. This is because they are constrained as far as knowledge and resources are concerned.
There is need to identify and open up more land for smallholder agriculture development. That's really key. Secondly, there's need to have a system of titling land that will allow more or the smallholder farmer to participate. A system that will allow a smallholder farmer or a poor person with low education to navigate and have access to land and to title. There is need to identify and open up more land for smallholder agriculture development. That's really key. Secondly, there's need to have a system of titling land that will allow more or the smallholder farmer to participate. A system that will allow a smallholder farmer or a poor person with low education to navigate and have access to land and to title. Invariably, this means that there has to be a review of the Land Act, and the government and the traditional authorities have to identify ways of helping access to land for those who are poor uneducated, and underprivileged. This means that there has to be a review of the Land Act, and the government and the traditional authorities have to identify ways of helping access to land for those who are poor, uneducated, and underprivileged.
If ways could be found to make land more accessible to smallholder farmers, then they would have that opportunity to grow, make their farms more productive, make agriculture a business, and thereby improving the quality of lives for their families. The need to deal with land access is of prime importance for future generations to come.